All right, so I'm doing this as more of a progress video. It has been an adventure in resin. I tell you what, I have failed so many times, but that's okay because like I said, it's adventure. You learn things, you fail, and then what do you get? You get a technique. You get your own little style and way of doing things, and that's because the treacherous swamp. I can't even say this, treacherous. Anyway, I'm just getting weird. But basically, I have stumbled through this to find my style, to find my technique, and to also learn from others along the way. I have done YouTube videos. I have bought a book. I have actually done the tutorials online. So basically, a really good start is to show you what I learned kind of through my failures. One, the resin that you use really doesn't matter. They have the same kind of rules. One-to-one measurements, deliberate stirring, don't whip it like eggs. The least amount of bubbles that you introduce, I'm not even saying that right. I'm not even sure if I am, but either way, if you have a minimal amount of bubbles, by the time you're done mixing your resin, the better. If you don't, let it sit for a couple minutes, let the bubbles take care of themselves and rise to the surface and pop. If not, you can use something called a heat gun. This is a heat gun for, I don't know, scrapbooking, whatever you want it. I use a flashing method, so you kind of just dip down and touch it a few times. You certainly don't want to keep it like that because heat and resin means cure. So, you know, the more heat you add to it, the faster the curing is going to happen. It's really not a good idea. You want the cure to be natural. You want it to be the exact same time it needs to be. And you also don't want to warp your resin in any way. So use the flashing method. Second, use a sealer. If you're using any porous material, as you can see, I had a bigger kind of organic looking piece of wood. I've cut it down into different shapes. I'm using a grapevine. I'm using some walnut. Actually, not walnut, excuse me, some oak and some maple. So I have a few different kinds of wood here. It doesn't really matter, but you want to use a sealant because anything porous, even paper, will create micro bubbles. Think about it. It's porous. It has the ability to, retain moisture. Not good. When you think about resin, not good. That just micro bubbles everywhere. I've never ever thought you could say the word bubbles and be angry, but honestly, you can. You absolutely can. Anyway, so once you're done sanding things down, getting your pieces all nice and sexy like, look at that, those look pretty sexy. I think those look real nice. They're super pretty. What's up, guys? Anyway, so you're gonna get your sealant here. This is Envirotex. They're gonna say that you only want to use it with Envirotex stuff. Oh, too bad because I'm using Alumilite. I have used Easy Cast. I have used, where is it? There it is. I've used ice resin. And my third, Alumilite, is the best. I love Alumilite. It is fantastic. It is a good price. It's clear. It's nice to work with. They give you the cups, whereas Easy Cast doesn't. You have to actually pay like $10 for their cups and stirs, which is just ridiculous. So anyway, I decided to use this clear spray. If you use anything else, you might be thinking like 4 to 6 more hours of just sitting here and waiting just to get ready to pour into a mold. So not the best. This one is super, super, super fast drying. Go into a well-ventilated area, people. Seriously, this stuff is no joke. Cover it. As you can see, I have plastic. I certainly didn't spray it in here. I have little kitties around here, so don't put it anywhere where you have pets or kids or animals, including yourself. Wear a respirator. I went out into my garage and I lined it with some of this plastic. You do literally just a super simple. Do light coatings. You don't want to overdo it. After a couple minutes, really dry. Flip them over. Couple on each piece. Make sure you get every little, area, the sides, the back, the front, all of that. Once you're done, you're going to have a piece that is, ta-da, ready to put into these molds. One thing about molds, also something I learned along the way, I have done a lot with molds, trust me. I did not want to go online and wait for a couple of days to get molds because I'm already learning patience by using resin in the first place. I can't even use it until 2 days after I'm done with it. There's like a day of prep. There's a lot of stuff. Okay, whatever. Not even getting into it. So molds are super important. I went the route of saying, oh, why don't I just do a wooden mold? Okay, easily just scratch that. Don't do it. I just talked about how porous wood is. So stupid. It didn't work. Second is this silicone. This actually created by hand. You can go to Home Depot. You get a silicone tube that fits into a caulking gun. It has to be 100% silicone. And then what you do is you get a really big bowl. You put about 4 ounces of concentrated dish soap. This acts as the catalyst. And then you put the entire tube of silicone into that bowl and you just start making a mold out of it. I use a PVC pipe to put it inside of here. And I have like a little cap right there. I have a little cap there, and then I have a little thing to put on top here, but I did need some air so this could cure. If you look inside, you can see there's holes. So the front of your piece is going to have this weird divot and weird hole. So not good, not the best. Why take all that time, take 2 days for a piece, and then you have holes, which also, this means it's porous. It's got, silicone isn't, but this has got a nice little hole in here we can create micro bubbles with. Not good, not good. Second is this flimsy sort of baking, candy making situation I got at Packatans. First, you can see it's got details on the bottom, something I really don't want. But I did this just to see if it popped out easily and made sense. It does pop out easy. But here's the thing. You see all that dust? That is like the resin, villain, basically. It's the worst thing for resin. It's like, oh, you wanted to do something really fancy? Guess again. Yeah, not okay. Okay, so like this is just nasty. So I'm just going to throw that away. Anyway, so the best thing that you can do is get these beautiful babies. I got these at Hobby Lobby because unfortunately my Packatans does not have them. So this is a big plastic jewelry mold. It's thick. It's nice. It's exactly what I need. And it doesn't, look, there's no dust. It's perfect. It's a beautiful little angel mold. It's fantastic. And then you have this one. Oh my goodness. This one is also a silicone mold, but guess what? It's thick, and it doesn't have that same, gathering of dust that the other one does. And I'm not sure why. You can tell. Look how thick that is in the bottom. That's very thick. So that's okay, too. As you can see, I have been experimenting with swirls and that pearl powder and dyeing and tinting. I actually use some of that embossing with gold flakes. So it's good to test strategies and techniques out before you get your wood pieces, obviously, because it's going to be hard to take them out of that resin. It's possible. You could use a heat gun and try to reverse the process if it hasn't, cured within a few days, but at the same time, it's just not worth it. So yeah, basically you're going to put them in, after you do a sealant, you're going to do a thin coat of your resin into these molds that's another micro bubble prevention thing, and it is a good rule of thumb to just have a really thin layer of your resin on your mold first. Then you're going to position your pieces. A lot of times you can use like a heat gun, a little glue gun. And I have like a mini glue gun that I like to use. Technically, you can use Elmer's glue. I feel like there's just too much, chemicals going on in there, and I don't even know. Elmer's just, it reminds me of kids eating glues in elementary school. Or maybe it's probably before elementary school. I hope they're not eating glue in elementary school. Anyway, so these will need to be coated. These will need to be set in place because it is liquidous. Resin is this thick liquid. These will start to drift if you don't have a way of securing them in place. So I'm going to use a heat gun, a glue gun with a brush so that I can do a thin layer of adhesives. It's not like a glob of it. Once these are in place, you can go ahead and pour your resin. If you just want a clear resin, go ahead and just pour it in. If you're dyeing, you can see that I have a green dye, I have a blue dye, I have some pearl powder and aged teal. The aged teal is kind of it's an embossing powder. Excuse me. So that's an experiment. You can't use a lot of heat with that because if you ever embossed anything, that's what it's for. The powder turns into this bubbly, kind of flat layer of whatever it's made out of. I don't even know. And it expands a lot and it'll take over your mold. So just make sure to not use a lot of that. Maybe a dab will do ya. So basically what you do is if you want to do a dye, you have your bigger resin that you've already mixed and you separate it into smaller little cups. You add a couple drops if you want it to be translucent. If you want it to be more of a solid color, you add a couple more. And that's about it. You really don't need a lot of that stuff. And what I would suggest is putting the clear resin in here first and then using the sides of the mold to drip little drips into there using like a toothpick. And then what you can do is if you really want to create a good swirl, like I was experimenting over there, you let those little drips sit for a second to let them kind of solidify in there, and then you drag them. If not, it's going to be a little bit too liquidous and a little bit too, it'll basically start to blend in instead of maintaining its own color and its own kind of structure. All right, so once you're done coloring and once you're done setting and molding and all of that, you're just going to wait. You wait for 2 days, which is why all of this prep, all of everything I've just covered is so important, because you don't want to come in here 2 days later and just be disappointed and shed one single tear because you have bubbles. Like I said, bubbles have never made me angry before until now, and they can ruin a piece. So really take the time to find your technique, to have patience, and do everything the way you need to do it. This is just a nice little video to crash course, and if you want to get into this kind of stuff, and basically my adventure, what I've learned along the way. I'm going to have a few other videos that will document me actually doing this process. So right now what you see is this is past the sealant stage. I took that big thing, I cut it into a couple different interesting pieces, I sanded it using my Dremel, and then I used that sealant spray. Now we're ready to start mixing my resin, adding a layer into the mold, placing my pieces in there with a little glue, and then dyeing and pouring and the rest of it. So I'm going to have those videos up for you one by one if you want to kind of go along with this process. Okay, have a great day. Bye-bye.